We'll now call the meeting of the Waco City Council on May 17, 2022 to order at 3:05 p.m. I want to take a moment to welcome our new City Secretary, Michelle Hicks, for her first meeting. We are so thankful to have you here, and I've already had such an amazing experience working with you in the last couple of weeks, but this is your first meeting, so just wanted to say a special welcome to you. And to the public. I know that everyone's going to really enjoy working with Michelle in this organization, both internally, our own city employees in this council, and the public as well. So welcome, Michelle. We're glad you're here. I'd be remiss if I didn't also thank Patricia Irvin for her faithful service as our interim city secretary. I just saw her a minute ago, but I don't. There she is in the back. She's here. There she is. And we are so thankful for her, again, faithful service to our city. It has been such a joy to get to work with you, and I think she's going to stick around and continue to help us in the weeks ahead. But just in this moment, would be remiss not to thank you for your continued work for us. So thank you, Patricia and Michelle. Glad you're here. Next, for our moment of silence, I would like us to remember the victims in New York and California of the attacks and their families, and specifically, I'd like to remember Dr. John Cheng and his family. Dr. Cheng is a Baylor University graduate and happened to be in the same fraternity I was in, and has been characterized as a hero in the California attack for combating the gunmen and saving many lives, although it cost his own life. So please remember to pray for this Baylor alumni who lived in Waco for years, who was a hero for the families of other victims who have experienced loss. And again, specifically for this man and his this man's wife and children as they go. So please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on any agenda item or during the hearing of visitors portion of the agenda. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. If you're here to speak and have not filled out a registration card, please see the City Secretary staff at the registration table outside of the auditorium to provide registration information so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation, and staff will distribute those to council. And if you're unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is available to be brought to you. Is there anyone present who would like to speak on a work session item? Seeing no one who is, oh, yes, okay, thank you. You can speak on something not on the agenda in the public hearing portion of the meeting at the conclusion of the business session. If it is something, yes, sir. Is that when you'd like to speak, sir? Yes. Thank you. Okay. Seeing no one is registered to speak on a work session item on the agenda, we will now recess the regular session and convene to work session with a report from our city manager.
Thanks, Mayor, and welcome to the council and the public today. We do not have any changes on the agenda today, but I do want to turn the mic quickly over because we have an important employee recognition item that City Attorney Ritchie is going to provide.
Mayor, later this month, a truly great employee will retire from the city. John Patterson has been an attorney for the city since June of 1983. In his 39 years with the city, he has served as the attorney for every single city department and has served the council as your interim city attorney twice. John is very knowledgeable of municipal law and detail-oriented. He will take on any challenge or problem and handle it well. He works so hard that, much to my dismay, he works most weekends and even on vacation on the work of the city. He is a mentor and support to me and all of the attorneys who have had the pleasure to work with him at the city. But most importantly, John is a truly kind and thoughtful person. Although we are so happy that John will be able to spend more time with Martina and the grandchildren, he will be truly missed. So I hope you will join me in honoring John at his last council meeting after serving the city for 39 years.
please.
City Attorney Richie, I would like to share all of those sentiments. While I haven't worked as closely as you have with John, I know that our city is deeply in debt and everything has his fingerprints on it, the business of the city. I know from a perspective of a practicing lawyer, I've dealt with John in private practice, served on boards and commissions, and we were always so well advised on those boards and commissions. And now on council, I've just seen how invaluable he's been to the city for these 4 decades of service, and I'm so grateful for all he's done. Sad to lose him, but grateful that he's going to be moving on to a wonderful period of retirement in his life.
Congratulations. As a young Baylor student, I received a speeding ticket in this town and planned to contest that hearing, that ticket. And in a pretrial hearing, John so eloquently convinced me that I had no case. So he not only represented the city well then, but that was my first impression of such a nice, kind, dignified public servant. But more than that, John, just these years since I've been able to be on the city council and sit at this desk, I've seen your diligence and faithfulness to our community. Waco is a better city because of your work. Waco is a better city because of all the work of our city staff members. And so to be able to see our citizens and the members of this town's lives improved because of your faithful diligence is so meaningful. So thank you for your service to our town. And so I'm so thankful and happy for a good retirement ahead. I hope you really enjoy it. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Council, for those nice words. John, as you heard in Jennifer's voice, means a lot to our community. And one thing that I just appreciate in the time we've got to spend together is John's demeanor is, he's extraordinarily smart, but his demeanor is, he has this quiet influence over a project that gets the job done well. And he's really pushed forward a number of key initiatives, including our work on getting a new landfill built. He's been really a ringleader there, and his quiet influence is just something I want to model in my leadership style. So, John, thanks for all the work. Truly going to be missed. All right. Council, we do have, of course, one informal report in front of you today. It's our informal report 2022-286, our second quarter fiscal year financial report, as well as our public funds investment quarterly report. A few highlights I wanted to call out. General fund revenues are up $13.4 million compared to last year, and $7.9 million more than budgeted. So general fund side looking very strong thus far, not surprisingly driven by increased sales taxes as well as early payments on the property tax line item. As y'all know, those kind of come in just based on how people want to pay them, and it looks like people paying a little early this year. On the expenditure side, we're $25 million more than last year, primarily driven by transfers out being done earlier this year, as well as increased salaries and benefits as a result of past increases, including our establishment of the base wage at $15 an hour, which I think, given the world we're in with inflation, has become an increasingly positive move, an important move for our workforce. Also, you probably noticed that hotel motel tax is trending up alongside tourism growth. We are looking at exceeding last year's amount for revenue in the second quarter by about $1.2 million. So that's a good sign that hotel revenues are heading in a positive direction, thanks to events like this weekend's Chalk Walk and other cool activities happening that were not happening last year. Additionally, I do have a section related to this IR that's a required reading, so if you'll bear with me for a moment, related to our investment portfolio. Overall, the total investment portfolio market value is $641.3 million, which is an increase of nearly $108.6 million from the $532.8 million reported at the end of last quarter. The city's investment portfolio for the quarter yielded 0.336% compared to the 180-day Treasury yield of 0.610%. The city's weighted average maturity is at 261 days compared to 309 days at the end of the prior quarter. The city generated investment earnings of $424,000 for the quarter. I'll take any questions on that IR at this time, if you have any.
Bradley, I don't have any questions, just a couple of comments on mostly on the second quarter report. First of all, I want to express my appreciation to Nick Sarpy and his team. The presentation is great. I mean, every quarter we see kind of improvements on it, but I think it has everything I want in it now, finally, Bradley. But, so, particularly,
Wait.
this is
Are
wonderful.
we sure we got that on,
I'm happy,
on video?
I need to, yeah, it's on tape now. But it has, I mean, what I've always talked about is getting the year-to-date and being able to compare that to last year's year-to-date budget and our year-to-date budget and last year's actuals. Because to me, those are the three things we need to be looking at. Are we doing better than last year? Are we ahead or behind? And then are we ahead or behind in comparison to the budget? And if you look at page 81, for those following at home, and really to echo some of the things you said, Bradley, our property tax is right on budget, and so we've done a good job of estimating what that's going to be. Our sales tax, as you pointed out too, 20% ahead, so it's an extra $6 million there. And we're happy to see that. Our expenses in the general were actually under budget for the year. And the things, and you kind of pointed them out, the expenses that are non-salary and benefit related are up a little bit, and we need to be mindful of that as we set the new budget. Some of that is timing. Some of it is also, inflation related, and the prices are going up on services and supplies. So we need to be mindful of that as we set our budget for this year and explain that to people. Yeah, we're going to be budgeting into an inflationary environment, which is not a fun thing. So the general looks great to me. When you look at the major utilities, water, wastewater, solid waste, and drainage, I think our revenue is up year over year on all of those. So we're managing those utilities great. We're behind our budgeted revenue in water, which this is the time of the year I always freak out because our water is always behind. But this time we're actually behind year-to-date budget too for the first time. So I know we've had some drought and some people are being careful about the water they use, but hopefully we'll get some rain here and people feel more freely about of using that water. In what I call the amenity funds, convention center, ranger museum, zoo, and golf, again, revenue up across the board in all of those. We're seeing admission and merchandise up year over year, and that's a great sign. And I think as we see these trends in the general and these major funds, we're seeing a good recovery from the pandemic. And I'm not ready to declare victory yet, but I think we're seeing admissions go up, merch sales go up. As you said, the hotel motel tax going up. With the sales tax up 20%, which is phenomenal. We see tourism coming back, but we're seeing some of this inflationary aspect, particularly in our expenses. I'm concerned about that again as we set the budget for next year. So as these components all come into better focus over the next 2 to 3 months, I'm excited about what we can do in the 2023 budget. But great work on reporting, Nicholas.
Well said, Councilmember Holmes, and I know Nick has now accomplished something that I nor Paul could do.
Shoot him up and spit him out.
Which is add the all-important column. No, Nick and the team are really, like you said, Councilmember, knocking it out of the park, and they've become such an asset to my team that, and it's neat to see the group that's developing even under Nick, and the budget analyst team and the budget manager team doing a really fine job. So thanks for highlighting that. And good analysis too, by the way. You're right on track. It's going to be a different environment for a lot, especially a new manager like me hasn't done a budget in an inflationary time, especially a significant inflationary time. So it's going to be a different year for all of us. Well said. We do have 5 public hearings on the agenda today. Those are going to be covered by Clint Peters, our Director of Development Services, here in a few minutes in the work session. And I'm going to highlight just a couple of resolutions here. There's 23 on the agenda today, and I'm going to highlight just a couple of them. First one is resolutions 300 and 301 related to the Magnolia headquarters, redevelopment and construction coming into downtown. As the council's well aware, this is something that we've been working on for a few years now. And I wanted to call back and hearken back to a meeting that then Councilmember Meek and I had with the Magnolia team. It's been 3 years since the initial meeting when we met with them and made the pitch. And I just really appreciate the leadership that he's shown and the council's shown getting this to reality. Additionally, I wanted to highlight the work of our economic development team. You know, most of the projects that you see come through for economic development, industrial development type projects are led by the Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Waco Chamber of Commerce, but this one is actually led by our Director of Economic Development, Kent George, and so wanted to definitely highlight his work as well as the legal team's work to get this in front of you. We're excited to see Magnolia come downtown, renovate what is a historic structure, giving it new life, putting a couple hundred employees inside of it that are high-wage earners, which we think will drive even more business activity in downtown. And looking forward to those resolutions being in front of you in a few minutes, or in a couple hours.
On that one, Bradley, I just want to comment too. One of the goals of this council for a long time has been to build out a diversified, robust economy, and a part of those goals has been to get employees with disposable income into our downtown economy, because I'm convinced that when they're here, they're going to spend their money to support barbershops and florists and dry cleaners and propel the local economy in the core of our city. And I'm excited about our economic development study that we're in process of doing right now that will help us have further guidance on strategies that we can implement to not only continue to get executive jobs that pay good wages into our downtown core, but also establish practices and procedures for how we support small business and continue to invest in manufacturing and distribution and all of the well-rounded components to our economy. But it's certainly a win to see a historic structure have new life breathed into it, and it's also a win to have new jobs come into our downtown economy at this level to support the downtown ecosystem. So thanks to staff and their work on this as well. It's certainly a victory.
Thanks, Mayor.
I hate to go after you, Dylan, but I guess I will in this case. But I really appreciate the Magnolia team, and it's a great image for Waco, and they're very thoughtful in their branding, and I think they're great for the city and great for Central Texas. This is such a cool project, and we're talking about 600 jobs in downtown Waco, and the ripple effect of that foot traffic, restaurants, shopping, small businesses, the economic multipliers of that much traffic downtown, because we don't have any big employers downtown, which is what we're trying to do, get more jobs and moving downtown. So this is such a great project. And again, as the mayor pointed out, the Trib building, great building, a lot of history there. And I think the preservation and improvement of that structure is an important part of downtown Waco as well. And I think it's a great return on investment, right at $14 million of property improvements for what we're doing in TIF and a grant of right around $3 million. So I think we're getting a great ROI there, and I really am supportive of this project.
One of the kind of neat things about it, there's a lot of neat things about it that y'all have highlighted, but additional one that I don't want to lose track of is there are going to be 4 new EV, electric vehicle charging stations in the public parking lot, as well as a solar electricity generating facility on top of, we assume, the roof. It could be in a couple different places, but presumably on the roof. And so appreciate Magnolia's interest in that, and that is a requirement of our agreement as well. So those are not just promises; those aren't empty promises. Let me say it that way. So excited to see them join us in a sustainability effort. The last resolution I'm going to highlight is Resolution 305, which recommends the approval of an E-grant application to the Texas Workforce Commission for child care relief funds in the amount of $527,000 approximately. The Texas Workforce Commission began accepting applications for funding in March. And these funds were made available to help child care facilities serve communities by providing reduced fees, improving cleaning of facilities, and also improving program delivery and curriculum. We're hopeful to be awarded, and if we are, city staff will develop a timeline and communications plan to notify the community members of the opportunities that would flow out of this grant. So appreciate staff jumping on this opportunity for excess funding.
Bradley, thank you for highlighting this one. I think it's one of those things that is top of mind for so many of our constituents and anybody who's ever had to bear the brunt of paying for child care and paying for finding adequate, advancing child care, for your children. And it's not easy, and the pandemic really was pivotal in exposing, some of our weak sides. So I think that this application, thank you staff for going for it, and many more like this, because as we can build jobs and career paths all day long, but if we don't have somewhere, if we don't have a way to manage childcare for it, it won't matter, because they won't be able to do the jobs that we have and create, because there's nowhere for their kids to go. So this we have been, I think that this council and the council prior have done tremendous work as we develop and incentivize employment, figuring work-life balance into that, because we all know what that means and feels like when we can't, or when we can't do it well. So I'm especially pleased to see this and looking forward to seeing more.
Yeah, for us to be able to accomplish our goals in economic development, we've got to be thinking through strategies like this one, or the outcomes that this resolution will bring to bear in our community, because we're not going to be able to achieve our goals otherwise. So,
Thanks, Council, for those comments. We do have 3 ordinances on the agenda this evening. Ordinances 322 and 323 are first readings, and the third final ordinance is a second reading. Ordinance 322 is a fun one. It's an interesting one, and I wanted to highlight that. It repeals a 2006 resolution and amends the Code of Ordinances to add a division creating a new Veterans Affairs Advisory Board. And that board will serve as the local expert group on information relating to veterans and resources and services in the Waco area. Really want to thank the involvement of the boards and commissions team for their recommendation on this item, and of course a special thanks to Mayor Pro Tem Borderud for his leadership and advocacy to call for this and to really work to the benefit of our veterans in this community. So looking forward to that second reading.
Thanks so much, City Manager Ford. I will reserve the bulk of my comments for the business session, but I do want to specifically thank Ashley Nystrom and Assistant City Attorney Sarah Rayleigh over there for all their good work in moving this forward, and to my fellow council members and the mayor for their support of this project.
And then Ordinance 323 approves and adopts the final project plan and reinvestment zone financing plan for our new tax increment reinvestment zone number 4, which we've talked about a lot and celebrated multiple times. There's another chance if you want to, but if not, it's a first reading and you'll have another chance at the next meeting. With that, Mayor, that concludes my report.
the consent agenda includes resolutions 2022-299 through 231. There's been, my understanding is that 305 has been pulled from the consent agenda. Are there any other items council would like to remove from the consent agenda? If not, then the consent agenda includes resolutions 2022-299 through 321, except for 305.
Mayor, I'd also remind Mayor that we need to pull 301 from the consent agenda, as there are affidavits of substantial interest that have been filed in connection with that.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. So 301 and 305 have been pulled. Any others? Very good. The next item on the agenda are the work session items 287 through 290. Bradley, would you please introduce the first work session?
Sure. Our first one is going to be the overview of the planning public hearing items, and Clint Peters, our development Services Director is going to cover these now. It does appear that Clint has gotten a haircut since I've last seen him. Looks, well played, sir.
Our summer hairdos. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. We do have 5 public hearings this meeting. The first one is dealing with subdivision plats. We just have the one plat this meeting. It is the final plat and construction plans of the Sanderson Farms Addition Lot 4, Block 2. This is out in our Aviation Industrial Park out by the TSDC campus on Tyree Road, in between Tyree Road and Aviation Parkway. This is a lot for the new Aston Johnson manufacturing plant that will be just off of Tyree. There is a sewer line extension involved with this plat that they'll have to construct from 84. Plan Commission did recommend approval of the plat and the construction plans. The next public hearing, 295, is a request for a special permit for a new drive-through window for a Linkage credit union at 4527 Spade Avenue. This is in that little office park off of Bagby and Spade New Road, where you have the Heart of Texas Council of Governments building, Workforce Commission, Goodwill, Fire Station number 5. They're just right off of Spade in between multiple of those developments. It is zoned O2, which does require the special permit for drive-throughs. That is in place as a protection because every once in a while O2 is located within residential areas. In this case, it's not. There's not any residential uses around it, but it does provide an extra layer of protection if there was. And so they are just requesting an addition of one drive-through lane and then an ATM lane. There's already an existing one there. They meet all the other requirements for the special permit, and Plan Commission recommended by a vote of 12-0. And you can see the building here off of Spade, and then the existing drive-through lane, and they'll add a little bit more out here.
So Clint, just under the ordinance, they need to request a special permit to add an additional drive-through lane.
Correct.
For people to access the teller services as they drive
Correct.
up.
Yeah, that's
But
all correct.
otherwise, they're doing that now at this location.
That's right.
Is that correct?
Right, yeah, it's just an addition of 2 additional lanes.
Thank you.
Plan Commission did recommend by a vote of 12-0 for approval. The next public hearing, 296, is a request for a bed and breakfast inn in O2 zoning district, a property located at 603 South 9th Street. Bed and breakfast inn, we don't see very many of these. They're a little bit different than your typical short-term rental or bed and breakfast homestay. It is a resident managed property. Doesn't have to be owner occupied, but you do have to have a resident managing the property that lives on site. And then it allows up to 15 guest units, which is it's allowed by special permit in several of our mixed use and higher density residential districts.
I have a question. You know, these have been around for quite some time, and several of my acquaintances and voters have lived in this little area back when it was nicer. Will at any time this ever revert back to regular rental instead of just bed and breakfast? Do you think? Or
So, yes, and I'll go through it. It's being renovated, so it could be used for short-term or long-term. The initial plan is for it to be a bed and breakfast, but there's no reason in the future why it couldn't go back to a long-term rental complex.
but for now, it'll just be bed and breakfast
Correct. Right.
with someone living, the manager living on site?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
And this property is at the corner of 9th and Clay. It's a residential complex. There originally was 11 units, one-bedroom units in that complex. Now there's just 9. Their little center building has been demolished. It is in that area that's been transitioning around the silos to more mixed use with some single-family residential, short-term rental, even some commercial development when you up closer to 8th Street near the VA. O2 zoning, it is a mixed-use zoning, allows everything from single-family up to multifamily, office, some limited service commercial, and then some uses by special permit, which this is one of them. So here's the project, this middle building. So you got a U shape here that has 9 units in it, and then this middle building had 2 units in it. They have demolished it. It was in really bad shape. So they did tear down that middle building. And then they plan to renovate it. This is kind of a rendering of what it will look like. They'll have a center courtyard area with the units that wrap around there. And then one of the 9 units remaining will be a manager that lives there. And then here's just another view of that. Here's some pictures of it. It does have existing head-end parking on 9th Street. They will need to add some additional parking on off the alley to meet the parking requirements. It's 1 space per bedroom, and so they will need 9 spaces there. There's currently 6 on this side, and they're adding another 6 on this side. And then you can just see some of the pictures. This is looking down Clay. Some of the houses have been renovated for short-term rentals. This is looking back towards downtown, towards the river on Clay, and then back towards Webster.
Do we have a sense of how long that property's been vacant?
My understanding is the current owner purchased the property about a year ago, and at that time there was just 3 tenants that lived in the complex out of the 11.
Is that due to just kind of the deterioration of the property?
Yeah. We did mail out 42 notices on this one and had no return or opposition, and Plan Commission did recommend approval by a vote of 12-0. And we do have some conditions.
I think it's going to upgrade the neighborhood when they renovate those little buildings. It'll really upgrade the neighborhood quite a bit because they've been really an eyesore there. But they weren't at one time. There were nice buildings, facilities that people rented to live in.
Neglected for past several years. We do have some conditions in there. They will be required to get a STR license and meet all the requirements of the STR ordinance, including the addition of the parking. And the next request, 297, is a rezoning request at 2022 and 2024 North 5th Street from Harris Arnart. This is a rezoning request from R2 to O3 on 2 lots at the corner of Proctor and 5th Street, just a block south of Herring Avenue. This area, again, is a mix. 4th and 5th contain a lot of single-family homes, vacant lots, some office uses. You have the zoo here, the Pape House facility, and there are some commercial uses at the corner of Herring and 5th Street. Medium-density residential office flex is the land use designation. That is a mixed-use land use designation. And you can see with the zoning that kind of mirrors that, where you have a mix of zoning districts ranging from commercial at the corner of Herring and 5th down to O2 and some O3 as well. Here's the property. It is these 2 vacant lots here. You look down 5th Street, there's some single-family homes adjacent to it. And then looking down, you can see the Pape House here. And then looking back up, you can see the commercial developments here. We have had 2 requests for rezonings in the last couple of years to O3, one across Fifth Street that was approved in January of 2021, and then there also was a request adjacent to this property that was denied by council back in April of 2021. We did not get any responses back from the notices from the neighbors, but we did get response back from Brook Oaks Neighborhood Association that was opposed to the change based on some of the uses allowed in O3 zoning compared to R2.
Clint, do you know if that house immediately next to the lots is a single-family home or is it an STR?
It got denied.
It is, it has been used as an STR. It is unlicensed, but it has been used as an STR over the past year.
Because that was the one we denied, right?
That's correct.
In my recollection, I went back to try to review that, but that was essentially a split, like no motion carried the day
Right.
on that denial. It was a denial for lack of action by council.
That's correct.
Is that
It was
right?
a 3-3 split
Yeah.
vote of council, so it did not pass. Plan Commission did recommend approval. It was a 9-3 vote for the case. And then our last request, 298, is another rezoning from R1B to R2. This is out in the China Spring area, the city limits, out in the Willow Bend neighborhood. This is just right off of China Spring Road. It's mainly single family in this area. There are some duplexes back in the rear of the subdivision of Willow Bend and Cougar Ridge. There are some commercial and apartments along China Spring Road. This is looking at it a little bit closer. This is a medium-density residential land use area. And you can see the zoning it is mixed zoning. You do have single-family zoning in the yellow, and then orange is R2, and then the green is R3C. The zoning predated the development. It was rezoned to this multi-zoning back in the mid-90s, and then the development happened in the past 10 years. And so a lot of what you see in the R2 zoning and the R3C zoning is actually single-family development. There is an apartment complex in the R3 on China Spring Road, and then there are some duplexes back here. But all the adjacent R2 and R3C zoning in Willow Bend is single-family residential.
Clint, is that unusual to have a single subdivision with those 3 different levels of zoning?
It is, especially like this where it doesn't really make sense how it was used. I think what happened is that initial rezoning was done by a developer that did not develop the property. And then it was sold over time, and the developer that did develop the property had different plans than what the zoning laid out to. And so, but all of the areas that are multifamily and R2 zoning that developed a single family, that is a permitted use, so it fit with the zoning ordinance. It just, they didn't go up to, the max density that was allowed by that zoning. So here's the property as a single-family home, and you can see the rest of the street is single-family. The differences between R1B and R2, they're very similar. The 2 differences are R2 allows duplex development and then also allows short-term rental if there's not another one within 500 feet. The property is already developed out as single-family residential, and the intent is for it to be a short-term rental. We did get a couple of cards in opposition to this. Nobody spoke at the Plan Commission hearing besides the applicant. The cards did not trigger the supermajority requirement, and the Plan Commission did recommend approval of the request. It was a 7-5 vote, but they did recommend approval of the request.
Clint Holmes over here. I know that we hold R1B as sort of the sacrosanct holy grail, and so I'm hesitant to change this to R2, but you're saying there was no further additional opposition aside from the 2 letters that showed up in the package? That was it?
That's
correct. Were these next door neighbors, or were these down the street, or?
They were within the 200 feet
Okay.
area.
Okay, and the other tough part is like the map you showed with all the colors, they're very proximate, very nearby, adjacent, different zoning, so it's it's a tough one. Anyway, I'm just, I don't have anything else to say about it, just, it's gonna be
Yeah, it is
struggling.
a unique situation. I think that's why the Plan Commission voted, they were.
Yeah, it was
torn
close
with
up
too.
plan, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was pretty well split down the middle.
It seems like this zoning does not reflect this neighborhood, like what it typically would be if this would come in as a new annexed-in subdivision or new plat, that doesn't fit, because if you look, those pictures show this is a single-family residential neighborhood, so it's a strange, I guess just the zoning itself, it does back up to commercial, but I think in terms of it is odd that across the street is R2 as
Yeah.
opposed to R1B.
And then commercial, if you take that camera angle from the other side, I mean, you'd have the back of a commercial. There's the mall right there, but, okay.
Yeah, it is a unique situation. Staff did recommend disapproval of it, but we did bring findings for approval just because of kind of the uniqueness of the situation. I will say, if this does get approved, and they do get a STR license, it would, it would restrict that area for 500 feet around from no other STRs. There are not any STRs that have been permitted in the area that could have an STR license now by right. And so we're not seeing a saturation in that area for STRs. So just having this one off by itself potentially could not have an impact on the area. That's all we have.
Thank you, Clint. And turn it over to Bradley.
It looked like you had something else to say.
No, I didn't have anything to say. I was just
Okay.
making sure it was you that was introducing it and not me.
This awkward pause, I was like, maybe there's something else. Thanks, Mayor. Our next work session is a discussion with representatives of the Central Texas YMCA. I'm going to invite the team up to the table here, led by Dan Pleitz, our local long-term attorney over at Naaman Howe, Smith & Lee. This discussion, Dan, why don't you come on up, and any of the members of the YMCA team that want to come to the table, we've got a chair for each of you. Don't be bashful. Come on up. This discussion relates to a request from the YMCA for the city's support for a $3 million tax-exempt loan. The support is a requirement, I think, that tracks back through the IRS code for this. Dan will explain in a moment. And it's to finance renovations, repairs, and additions to the Greater Waco YMCA in West Waco. And following council's discussion today, we would plan to bring a resolution for this item to a future council meeting if the council's so inclined. So at this point, I'm going to let Dan take the mic, and if you don't mind introducing the members of your team today, Dan, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I will ask Jeff Andreessen, who is the CEO, to do that for me because I will not remember everyone. Jen Ritchie suggested we bring someone who could speak to the issue, and they brought the staff. So, but here we are.
Thanks, Dan, Mayor, Council. Today I brought with me David Strajewski, who's the Vice President of Operations for our east area that includes Waco. Theo Watson is right here. He's the local board chair for the Waco Family Y. Got Michelle Corneliuson, who is the executive director of the local Y, and then on the very end we have Kelly, who is our CFO.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. And group, what this is let me give you a quick background. So, and I was actually a member of the Y some time ago, but 2-3 years ago, the Y in Waco was also known as the YMCA of Central Texas, and they were in trouble financially. And the National Y got word of that, and they contacted the YMCA in Williamson County, which was called the YMCA of Greater Williamson County, and said, "Would you help? Because we're gonna go under in Waco." And they said, "Yes, we will." And they did a merger. It was an asset merger, where all of the assets in Waco were transferred into the corporation in Williamson County. That corporation then retained the same name. So for branding purposes, you're going to see the same name you've had all along, YMCA of Central Texas, but it's a whole different thing. It's now the merged company, and because they have strength in Williamson County, they have the financial ability to really do a lot that we could not do before. The exact purpose of this is to seek the council's approval at such time as appropriate for that loan, an amount of $3 million, to be tax exempt. The reason for that is, as a tax exempt loan, it bears interest at a lower interest rate than normal, and as you all know, I'm sure now, rates are crawling up, and they would have a locked-in rate for 16 years of 3.30 from Extraco Bank. And so that is our goal in being here. If you'll see on the next slide, and I'm not very good at working with this tech stuff, but there's the first thing we were talking about the loan, and then we're required to get some consents to do this tax exempt. We had to get the consent of McLennan County. We got that back on April 19th. We also have to have your consent, which we're seeking at the June 7th meeting. And so I don't forget it, there's zero anything to the city as far as liability. This does not count to against your bond authority. This is entirely a loan of the YMCA with some fancy stuff we put on it to make it tax exempt. It doesn't count in any way at all as far as any other permit that the city would grant. So if you do a building permit for this rehab, which they're going to talk about here in a minute, this does not approve that. This is simply dropping the interest rate, and I figured it'll save them $300,000 to $400,000 in interest expense, and that is well worth asking for your consent. There is going to be a financial package, and beyond the $3 million that we're asking to borrow, which we can now borrow because we're strong enough to do it, they're going to put $1.2 million of their own money out of Williamson County operations into the rehab of the Waco Y. And they also, in the merger, I didn't realize this, inherited some money from the merger. So there's another $500,000. Their sum of everything is about $4.7 million they will be putting into that project. So at this time, I'm going to ask Jeff if he could, and he'll be working with whoever's our slide master back there to explain the facilities, and then we'll have a discussion briefly about the programs.
Thank you, Dan. Mayor, Council. This slide just shows you the dark brown roofs. We're in need of rehab. The 4.7 that's been projected to be for this project, about 50% of it is dedicated to infrastructure. Over the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a deferred maintenance problem and concern as the YMCA in Waco struggled. Their roofs began to fail. The light tan roofs, the flat roofs, were absolutely, they were an absolute failure. The dark brown roofs were need to be repaired, and so that work has been completed with funds that we secured through the merger process. In addition to that, the next infrastructure item is the chiller. The chiller, this building is 80,000 square feet, and it utilizes a central chiller system. That chiller is in failure. Last summer, we temped it together. Again, it failed this weekend again, so we have a temporary pump on it while we go about securing the repairs of that. That chiller system is part of the infrastructure repair as well. If you go to the next slide. Internally, this building was built in over 3 periods of time, and so it dates back to its original, which was some of them in the 1970s all the way up to about 1990. The 4.7 is about 50% of the, a little bit over 50% of the total cost of the renovation of the project that has been suggested. The colored-coded areas there are the areas that are going to be improved. The areas that are not color-coded will go to the next phase, which we will fundraise for at a future date. These areas here are highlighted on this budget. At the very top right-hand side, you can see the 7.3 for the total. Those colored coded are representative of the areas that are for family and youth activity areas that will promote a safe and modern, updated area. At pre-COVID, this facility served a very diverse group of folks that in 2018, they had about 3,700 units. A unit is about 3.6 people. So right now, right during the COVID, they came out of COVID with about 1,700 units. We're climbing back up because we've added additional activities. The Waco Family Y predominantly closed down during that period of COVID and dipped down to a very low number, resulting in part of their financial problems. There was about 100 YMCAs across the country that got, during the COVID period, got put on a watch list, and Waco was representative of one of those. The 4.7 that we're going to be doing in improvements will ideally bring this back up to somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3,000 units of folks that join either through their own financial or through support through our annual campaign plan that we provide free and reduced services for.
When you say units, you're talking about kind of household membership units.
Yeah. So Josh, it's about 3.6 folks, and so if you had a family of 5, you'd be in that mix, but there could also be a single or a couple, senior.
Thanks.
I think that's my last slide. Yeah, that's about 9,000 people.
And now we have a slide in here about the impact to the city, which is further over. Well, or no negative, there isn't any. We pay the loan back, 0 city liability. It's just a consent we're asking is for the loan, nothing else. We talked about the building permits will not be engaged at this time. And as we build it, they will be taken as necessary. And then I know, is there a next slide? Let's see, one about, well, no negative impact. Oh, yeah. There's the positive, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're going to have the strength we talked about now that we didn't have. This is a renewal for 9,000 people in our area. It's going to be a whole lot better. And we can expand our programming because now we're undergirded financially. So it's going to be better both to look at and be in, but to just not have all these things that they let go by. Imagine 9,000 people in the building right now and the air conditioner goes out. Not all at one time, 9,000 people, but it'd be a catastrophe, and that would really, we got that in the fix. At this time, I know that we have some program things that Jeff, and maybe he could call on our staff to talk to you about as well, what we are doing beyond the structure.
Can I ask a question? So you can only use these services at the Y unless you're a member? You have to be a member before you use the services or the facilities there?
No, ma'am.
Or not?
No, we use this. A member just means that they pay an annual dues, or else they receive a scholarship for an annual use. You can also use it as a non-member, so somebody can come and pay a day fee or get access to the Y free of charge.
So I can come in there and use the facilities?
Yeah, anybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, today, I thought I'd turn it over to give you a little bit of an update. I'm very, very proud of the work that the local board has done. The local board, when we did the merger, there was 8 individuals that came from the existing YMCA of Central Texas Board into the newly merged branch of the YMCA of Central Texas Association. They are now at 15 individuals, and Theo is the chair of that board. They have they've quadrupled the amount of funds that they've raised in 2021 for scholarships for families, and they're on their way to try to recruit between 20 and 30 individuals. 2 of those representatives from this local boards will have voting rights on our association board. They are very similar to all the other branches that we have across the 5-county area. So there's some priorities that were made when the merger happened. One was to get financially stable. That was the #1 priority. And that was to, this YMCA has had a long history of that. It was stabilized by the usage of the Harvey YMCA, and then it went out, and then it did, with those surpluses from the Harvey Y, it served the outreach areas across your community. So that was the #1 priority. The second was to make sure that everyone had access through a scholarship fund that had frankly fallen off the road during that COVID period. They were raising, frankly, very good funds during that 18-19 and prior to that, but it dropped down to an all-time low and never had an annual campaign in 21. The third one was to re-establish outreach services across your community. And I'll let David and Theo talk about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so one thing that we really wanted to do, like Jeff was saying, is reestablishing our outreach services and reconnecting with the community. So some of the things that we've done, as you see up on the board, is we've partnered with Rappaport, we've partnered with Tolliver Baptist Church, and we have some things in place right now that we're going to be implementing here pretty soon. On the 25th, we're going to have our Silver Sneakers program that's going to be implemented. We're going to start that at Tolliver Baptist Church, as well as our blood pressure monitoring. And so when we think about these programs, we have to think about what they are for. And we want to improve the quality of life of our elderly population, as well as give back and allow these individuals to monitor their own health, and we want to help them along those efforts. So another thing that we want to do is we want to really reach out to that community of young people. So when we're talking about our young people, we're talking about our young preteen, adolescent boys and girls, those individuals who are at particular high risk. So we want to approach that from a multi-systemic perspective. And one way that we can do that is by introducing pro-social activities. And we have on the 26th our Summer Bash, which is going to be a carnival-style themed event where we invite members from the community, especially our East Waco community, so that they can come out and enjoy something positive, games, other events, and we're going to be doing that at Rappaport, which is the facility that we are going to be partnering with for this event, as well as looking at some long-term partnership opportunities in the future. They've reached out to us to use our gyms as well. So that's something that we're looking forward to. And all of these things are of dire importance to the community, and really we want to convey to the community that we are here to stay. We want to offer additional opportunities to serve that community. We recognize that we're not perfect, but we want to listen to that voice, the voice of our customers, the voice of that community. We want to be able to provide those things that they're asking for. We look at our Safety Around Water program that's going to be implemented here pretty soon. Next month, we secured a grant with Cooper Foundation. We're working with La Vega to bus some of those individuals who would benefit from safety around water to our facilities at Harvey, where we have the pool capacity to support them. Now, when we talk about safety around water, we want to also highlight that this is for all intents and purposes, a public health concern. It's something that we all should be worried about. Texas ranks among highest in the nation of individuals who die by drowning. So this program that we're going to be implementing is it's so that we can help those individuals learn more about water, learn more about safety, and the Y is going to be at the forefront of those of that training. So that is my report. I'm going to turn it over to David. If you have anything else, Michelle.
I've got a question. My children attend Hillcrest PDS and Waco ISD, and for 6 years now, they've been in the YMCA after-school program, which I believe is managed out of the Central Texas YMCA. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's not just available at the Hillcrest PDS campus, but it's also offered throughout Waco ISD, some on campus, some at the Y, and then also in a few other school districts. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. We actually, when the bell goes off in the YMCA of Central Texas, we serve 3,325 children every single day after school. 9 of those after-school sites are in Waco. We just worked with Waco ISD in the last month to provide them, through their child care relief funds, provide them a big old summer camp for, I think it's 200 children this summer. It's a brand new program. And then we provide every day at the Waco Family Y on Harvey, there's 200 children that are at the day camp all summer long, which was last year when the air conditioner was out, it was a little rough. So didn't smell real well. So.
Thank you.
We just mainly thank you for your time, and I feel honored getting to sit with these people down here. And you all decide what you want to do with us, but we sure would like your approval because it'd save us several $100,000, and you can sort of see where that money goes because it'll go into things like they've been talking about. And we would, if you want to put us on the consent agenda, if you're so minded, we'd love that. But if we need to come back and have a airing again, we'll do that. We'll be here on June the 7th and seek your affirming vote. And thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you for your presentation. I want you to know I'm coming with concerns. I know that, Dan, you mentioned in your presentation how, with the realignment with the Williamson County Y, that now you were strong enough to do that. And I'd like to account that perhaps that the recent purchase of the Doris Miller facility assisted in that strengthening. But one of the things that I know that will have to happen with the Y in its new iteration and new formation is the reestablishment of trust. I said too many changes have happened, and we can't blame you for your role in, just like folks can't blame past councils for ordinances passed. However, there is some disconnect in parts of Waco that have to be established and right-sided before I feel comfortable with this. I think that there, and I see the proposals and propositions that are happening. I know that there's some plans in place, I'm liking the way the initiatives that are being made, but I just know that there's a lot of mending is going to have to happen before people are very comfortable in this, because there are things and opportunities that were missed on the Y's behalf when things started going bad at Doris Miller. There are things that didn't have to happen with Doris Miller that did to benefit the Harvey Y, and we all know, we as a community know this. And so it's not like that's one of those things where, they got with Williamson and everything's good. No, it's some bridges that will need to be mended. And I hope that along the stance of this process and you all reestablishing yourselves in Waco, you take into account that you might want to get a pulse of your community, your lost community, as we go forward. And I think that some of the things and directions that you're going in, you have begun. But I think it would behoove you to really take a deep look and really get community engagement on this piece, because it's not something that it hasn't healed. And I mean, by no means do I have the ability to speak on behalf of a whole neighborhood, but I do believe as I represent them, I've heard those conversations. And in the things that we were doing, in the movement that we were doing, we had to be very careful about what and why we made the decisions that we did. Because so many things had been mismanaged, so many things had been done away with no consent, no concern, no conversation. So as we begin to grow, which I believe we can, I know the responsibility is on you to build those bridges.
Absolutely.
Councilwoman, I don't think I could have said that any better than you just did. Thank you very much for those comments. I will tell you that our YMCA association did not go into this lightly. And I appreciate the fact that you brought this up today, and you can trust in our leadership that we will have, like Theo said, we will be aware and listening. One of the things that we are going to continue to do is to grow our local community board as representatives for that voice, and we could use all the help we can get. I think that there's one of the things that was very clear to me during the early stage of this process was an absolute, I think there was an eroded credibility on the Y's behalf, and I think it's behoove of us to fix that. Thank you.
Holmes here, just a couple of comments. I share Councilmember Barefield's concerns about community engagement. It's a very important part of what we're trying to do with the YMCA's here. So it seems like we're taking a step in the right direction, and if that's a high priority, that's great. Just a couple notes here I have. As the host jurisdiction, which is what Waco is, our obligation or the request here is just to approve the project, the maximum amount of the loan, the legal owner, and the location. And the city of Waco and the taxpayers have no liability or financial responsibility at all.
That is
right?
correct.
Yeah.
Councilmember, we did check with, of course, our bond counsel, city's bond counsel on that fact as well. And we provided a email in the packet that shows his comments to that effect as well.
That's been confirmed then. Great. Well, I do think that this YMCA facility is in need of a rehab, and my 11-year-old son goes over there and uses that facility for basketball and summer programs, and I don't want him to go over there if there's no air conditioning, that's for sure. And it's in need of a refresh, and there's a lot of deferred maintenance over there. So I think this project is important for the community. And my last comment is we've got one of the premier transaction lawyers in Texas, and Dan Pleitz, working on this thing. And he knows nonprofit leverage structures probably better than anybody in the United States. And if he's in it, I feel comfortable that all the parties are being protected here.
Thank you. I need to introduce you to some more people.
We were working on deals back in the 80s, you know, and
Thank you very much.
I have a great reputation.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you all for being here today and for your dedicated work to our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mayor and Council, our next work session is an update on the My Waco Resident Engagement app. If anybody listening to me right now does not have the app, go download it. You're about to hear all kinds of cool things that are going on. We've got a couple folks joining us at the table today, starting with Monica Settlemyer, our Director of Communications and Marketing. Next to her is Stephanie Jensen. She serves as a decision support developer in our information technology team. And next to Stephanie is Mike Seawright, our Chief Information Officer. Each of these individuals are part of the team that developed and have launched this application that I think is just a really great improvement for our residents as well as the city organization. The team's going to be given an update on the solution and also talk about some future improvements that we're looking for, as well as some statistics and what we use for our communications and marketing strategies, and perhaps a look at how y'all as the council and the listening public can help us spread the word a little more and get this application into more people's pockets. So with that, I'll turn it over to the team.
Thank you, Bradley, and thank you, Mayor and Council. I think Bradley went through my outline of the agenda very well there. Just one part on the metrics side of it. I wanted to bring Stephanie Jensen with me today. She managed the project from day one, did an outstanding job. She continues to work with that project, and she has one slide that I think you'll be happy with. We're trying to get better with data, to pull that data out of the system, to be more data-driven, to make sure internal stakeholders have quick access to what's going on within Waco, and she's done an outstanding job there. So first, I want to just review what Waco is. It's a centralized system for residents, or really anyone, to create a request for anything like an animal concern, code compliance concern, illegal dumping, a pothole that they might see, take a picture of and submit it. People can even submit compliments if they have a compliment to city staff. We also have just a generic request option as well if anyone has any type of request at all. Those requests get routed to the city departments, and then city staff work those as tickets or work orders. Those tickets stay open until they're closed, and then they are tracked within the system so that nothing falls through the cracks once it's submitted. Again, users can download that on an iPhone or Android app. They can also go to the City of Waco website, look for the MyWaco logo, click that, and get the same experience on the website or on the app. The personalized resident engagement experience and digital communications, that's something that we need to work on more, is to really encourage residents to create an account so they can receive personalized messages directly from city staff. Residents can still submit requests anonymously, but we think it's important to start building that out so that residents create an account and then we can communicate with them directly via email or text message. We have a Spanish version of the app as well that we're proud of, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So a couple of things. Earlier I heard that the pandemic obviously really changed a lot of things, and so it really showed a lot of opportunities for us to get better to make sure we transfer our business processes to the web. I do think it's important that we don't forget our face-to-face and call center folks as well, and those residents or community members that might not have an iPhone or internet access. Those folks are just as important. I think our face-to-face folks provide great customer service, and so really trying to standardize a lot of what we do there, and also collect a lot of that data as well, so we can again be more data-driven in regards to resident engagement and customer service. If we can do that, and we can pick the right solutions, that'll help us be more proactive and consistent with how we communicate. One thing that I wanted to remind folks as well is that MyWaco is not an open records request system. We have a separate system for that, and it is not a 911 or emergency system as well. We have different avenues for that. So just a couple things that we're working on to get better at for sure. Improving metrics, I talked about that. I kind of talked about that enough probably, but again, I think we need to pick solutions and adopt solutions where we can get access to the data. Text notifications, that's something that we really have not pushed a lot within MyWaco, but it's something that we plan to really improve on and give residents that option if they want to receive emails or text messages from us to empower them and give them that option. Resident FAQs is something that I know we really need to work on. If we do that right, that will allow us to create consistent and accurate responses to the most common issues at the city so that we can respond quicker and make sure that information is accurate. Staff training, staff FAQs, we are working with a few departments to get better there. I think we did an outstanding job at the very beginning of this project, but we need to continue that training, make sure that we are really customer focused, customer service focused, and create opportunities for our internal staff. There is a user conference coming up from Rock Solid here pretty soon. That's the vendor that we chose. And we're going to send that out to our stakeholders internally. It's a virtual conference. We'll get to see what other cities are doing with that same solution. Our sales rep is actually a council member at a small city in California, and so I talked to him quite a bit. Great guy. He's continuing to let me know the improvements that are coming around with this solution, and so I'm excited about the future for Rock Solid. Now I'll turn it over to Stephanie.
It's not changing. There we go. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm going to talk to you, I have a few slides to show you on the metrics of the current state of My Waco and the successes that we've seen. The first slide is regarding the downloads of the mobile app for iPhone and Android. At the time that the slide was created, there were 3,756 downloads. I checked it this morning, and that number is closer to 3,800 already. Of those, 73% are Apple, and 27% are from the Google Play Store. Mike mentioned we have a really good relationship with the vendor, and they're quite impressed with the number of downloads that we have currently, considering we're 5 months in. So that made us pretty happy when they agreed with that. This next slide is about open and closed requests. So all the numbers you see here were taken in about mid last week. And at that time, we had a total of 1,388 records total that had been submitted. Of those, 83% are closed and 17% are open. A few interesting facts about these requests. 30 of these requests are duplicates, which means there's one pothole and multiple people reported on that issue. And the system handles those duplicates. It merges those together, and any comments and updates, staff only has to update one request, but everybody that submitted a request will get those updates. We have 414 requests that are designated as private. That means that the submitter or requester chose to make their request private so that it's not seen outside of the city organization. There are also a number of requests that are by default set to private. So those typically will include or require information from the requester that is private, and we don't want that outside of the city organization. And on average, we receive about 9 requests per day. As you can see from the chart, the line chart, the bottom line indicates the open requests, those 17%, and the top line represents the closed requests over a period of time or any given time. And you can see that staff is consistently maintaining a high level of requests closed at any given time.
How do you define open and closed again, homes over here? What, is closed mean that it's resolved? I'm trying to figure out your definition.
Yes.
And did you have some more to that? Because I have a question about that too.
So I'm trying to figure out how could on the first day you have more resolved issues than, I guess you immediately resolve the issue, okay. All right, I'm with you.
Councilmember Holmes, during
Potholes been filled.
well, during December, we had an internal testing group, and I suspect that maybe those early December notations are that early testing group where the staff went around and found issues and logged them, and so they would have been open prior to December 4th, but had closed in that window. So I think that's what you're seeing.
Yep, thanks.
But, so, in my question, so who verifies that a project that's marked and communicated as closed is actually closed?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I said, who verifies that so if I submit a thing and it goes in and they say, hey, Andrea, we got your message, because, I'm an app user. And they say, hey, Andrea, we got your note, and then it'll come back and say, hey, we've resolved your issue. Who verifies that?
There's a couple of answers there. We have quite a few users that log into the system that are, I would call them quality control users. To kind of keep an eye on what's going on. We also have department heads and managers as well that keep an eye on that. So there's a mixture of individuals at the city that keep a close eye on those closures. And if it's closed too early, we need to probably reopen that request and make sure that it's not closed until it's truly closed. And that's something I think during those FAQs for staff and the training for staff that we can really address that. I agree with you on that one.
Thank you.
I guess, yeah, along those lines, you could have a user submit a request and it has been responded to, and from the city's perspective, maybe it has been closed out to the best of our abilities, but it may be in their mind the problem is ongoing. Is that kind of what you're getting at, Andrea?
Oh, I mean, if it's a problem, that's a problem, and it is not fully resolved, then it's just not resolved. Okay. I mean, if it's there's some things that are, cut, dry, point, period, or it may be something that is a little bit more complex and has to require more things, and so it may be fixed for a minute, and then it's not fixed all the way. So that's why I was like, is there what type of rotating checks and balances? And when you say that there are people who pop in and do those things and check on them, I think that'll be helpful just from multiple eyes. Because, I mean, if, Andrea is not the tech queen, if Mike sees something, I might not know diddly squat about what Mike saw, but you do. And so, it's just if more than one pair of eyes on it, just, gives us a better checks and balances, I think.
Absolutely. And I think also as well, a lot of tickets get forwarded to different departments that might not come in as the right issue for the right department, so it has to get forwarded on. We also forward things to Encore as well, or encourage users to call Encore for certain issues. So we're learning that for sure. And so I think that's something we need to make sure we put in the training to make sure that once that ticket is closed, it's truly closed and there's a resolution to it.
But I do like the timeliness of the responses, though.
Yeah.
I like that very much.
Good.
Agreed.
Okay. This slide talks about the top request types. And as you can see in the middle of the pinwheel, trash and litter on private property is one of the bigger, or is the highest reported request type at 20%. At the top, you can see building hazards or dilapidation comes in following the trash at 13%. And then as you go around, you can see potholes, high grass, junk vehicles, open storage, and brush are our top request types.
Can I pop in here real quick? I love the app and being able to submit trash and litter on private property, but seeing how high this number is, it feels like we need to have a larger city conversation on how we're addressing particularly the combination of illegal dumping in alleys and bulky waste being left on the curbside.
Yeah.
It is like the thorn in my side. And so I wonder if we could do some like strong PSAs and also potentially looking at what our process looks like, because the way that this works in the app right now is I'll see that a neighbor has 4 mattresses on the side of the road, and then code enforcement comes and then they talk to them, and then things are sitting on the side of the road for several days. And I know the 3 of y'all, that's none of your jobs, but the way that this connects to just quality of life and public health and safety and aesthetic appeal in our neighborhoods is something that I think a lot of us are very concerned about. So I'd love maybe some creativity between council and city staff, solid waste, comms, of how do we mitigate both preventing this and dealing with it while it's here, because what's working right now is not working right now. But I love being able to submit it.
Well, and I think if multiple voices, many hands make light work. And I think when we encourage and empower our citizens to use this tool, that didn't exist before now, it will give and feed to an opportunity because, see, how you said you have those duplicate ones. So if 20 people live on that block and 20 people have submitted a thing, I mean, if they don't do anything about it, then is when when the spotlights start coming out, right? Because there's a failure in communication. And I said, but, if more people get involved, and if, we are, so when Kelly's out on her walks and she's with her app, and she's explaining to folks about why, because that's the first thing I say, hey, did you log it in the app? When people come in, because they come to me and they say, hey, Andrea, this is so-and-so, have you logged it into the app? Have you downloaded the My Waco app? I mean, that's the one thing that I think is helpful. So, I know Monica's gonna get sick of us talking about another job for Monica, but at some point we'll have to figure out how to really, really reach in all levels. Whether Kelly signed up to do a commercial. You didn't know that. She did.
You're stealing my thunder.
See? I'm sorry. Okay, y'all go ahead. Go.
Well, if we come in really quick on this, one of the data points that I want to point out too is the number of first, also, I mean, I can't wait to praise this app in a minute, and thank you guys so much for this. This is a huge victory for our city, huge, incredible win in terms of public engagement, and so thrilled about this. But jumping in on to comment on this slide, the building hazards being such a high number, and I think what's interesting about a couple of these is that some of these can happen quick. Like brush can get dumped on at a property quickly, or trash, the highest number can happen. A mattress is there one day and it wasn't there the day before, and that's a quick turnaround. But the building hazards usually are not sudden. And so the fact that there's been such a high number of building standard hazards and dilapidation reported is something that I would just encourage our staff to look at. And I know we're having our budget conversation tomorrow on kind of future work around some of these subjects might come up. And I think that my hope is that for kind of long-standing issues that have been in place, I absolutely celebrate our citizens being able to report them quickly, but hope that for something long-standing like building hazards, we'll be able to look at strategies around, to kind of Councilmember Palmer's point, how do we make it to where it's really hard for people to find long-standing problems because of the work of our city in terms of our code enforcement being built up to be able to do that. And then and this might be stealing thunder, we might be getting ahead on this too, but some of these other things that happen kind of quick, like junk on a property, I do wonder if like utilizing some of these metrics on where this is happening, where the reports are coming in, can inform staff to build out these policies and procedures that Councilmember Palmer is referencing to. So I think that there's probably a lot of data points coming out of this that can identify a problem, where it's happening, the frequency it's happening, that might be able to bring efficiency to other to departments as they're not only being reactive to this, which is an amazing tool, but also proactive to solve kind of the problems as well.
One thing, Mayor, and then I'll let the team hop back in here with the presentation. To Councilmember Palmer's point, we do owe the council a follow-up. You had asked specifically at our last discussion regarding alley maintenance for a future follow-up. And so what I'll do is kind of queue us up for a future agenda item that's a little expanded based on the commentary that I'm hearing from the council. We'll just bring Cody and the team back in, as well as somebody from code, and have a robust discussion, because I think the opportunities for improvements are there. As I drive D2, D4, and probably some of D1, there is opportunities here to do a better job to keep our streets clean and safe. And so I'll turn it back over to the team.
I was just wondering if in some of these reports, we can find out which districts are reporting these requests, if possible. I know there's a lot of construction in my district right now, so that probably the driving hazards would probably be very high in my district. But it's something for the council member to look at and talk with our constituents and neighborhood associations with. So I'd like to have that data.
You bet, Councilmember Rodriguez, we'll get it. It is an item that can be analyzed. Stephanie, do you recall, we looked at this like a few weeks ago. It was pretty balanced across all the districts, but does anybody remember when we looked at it, kind of how it broke out by district? And it's okay, we'll follow up. It looks like I'm getting the oh crap face over here. So we'll follow up on that one.
Yes.
Well, you might also see a variance between, like you may live in District 5 and work in District 2, or, live in 1 and work in 3 or something like that. And so there might be a difference between who's submitting it and where the request is being submitted, which might be of some interest too.
Well, I want to have a town hall meeting here pretty shortly, so I'd like this, I want to get with staff first and the mayor on scheduling that, and I'd like to have this data when we have our meetings, my meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so if you've paid attention to this slide, the next slide is kind of a given. Requests by department, clearly code compliance gets the majority of the requests at 51%, and then public works at 24% here at the top. And then the rest of the departments kind of decline from there.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
On the police, what kind of calls are those? Those are not 911 calls or anything of that nature, are they? Are they just, what are they calls for to the police?
The intention is to have non-emergent requests come in through this app, but we have a request type for speeding, noise and nuisance. There's 4 or 5 of them that can be reported. I can't remember them all.
Illegal parking is one I'm hearing.
Yes, parking violations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. This slide is kind of busy. This is a dashboard that was built using the Esri enterprise agreement that we recently acquired. It's on ArcGIS Online, and so Rock Solid, that's our vendor. They have a metrics component in the back-end console that staff uses, and it's fairly informative, but it doesn't drill down into as much data as that we have available to us in the GIS area. So this dashboard was built in order to kind of do a little bit more in-depth analysis. It gives the City of Waco organization a 360-degree view of the My Waco data and allows departments and department heads the ability to view the types of requests that are coming in, the numbers of requests that are coming in for their departments, and see how they're being handled. So again, at the time this slide was created, mid last week, you can see that we had 1,388 total requests, and that goes back from December 6th of our soft launch to mid last week. You can see how many are open and how many are closed. And here you'll see that there's, on average, it takes about 9.2 days to close a ticket for city staff. So for some request types, that might be a really long time. For other request types, not so much. So that number the way that the dashboard, the filters that are set in this view, it's looking at everything. It's looking at requests that may take less than a day to close, and it's taking into account requests that may take weeks, 4 to 6 weeks to close. So as you move around in the dashboard and change the filters, you can filter by request type, department, council. There's additional, hidden over here in the side, there's additional filters for neighborhood association, code, and public health or environmental health. As you move around through those filters, these numbers all will change according to what you've set. So you can change if you want to know what happened in March for all departments, you can change the filter to the month of March.
Is this an internal deal, or can anybody use this filter system? You just
So
log
this
on?
is an internal dashboard. It was designed for city staff to do analysis because it has those private requests in there, and it has all of the details, including location for those private requests.
Makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Councilmember Holmes, I would, so this is the problem with me being out a week, okay? This team is so good. This is my first time seeing this cool tool. Looking forward to using it. I think we could probably build you one, though, that's very similar, that restricts some of the details, and maybe just gives you the statistics, because I see a council district tab up there, up in the top right, and to Councilmember Rodriguez's point, she could click on that and click District 2 and know real quick how many are open, days to close. It would automatically adjust all the statistics. And so why don't we kind of put that in our queue for taking out some of those details that maybe wouldn't be good for everybody to have publicly, but you can kind of save as this dashboard and take a little out. That'd be awesome. So
Save as is good. We can do that.
Help me interpret the bar chart with the orange. So I see like Alta Vista, blank, Baylor. What are the bars that are every other that don't have a neighborhood association name attached to them?
So this graph is for neighborhood associations, and due to the real estate on the screen, it doesn't list all of them. Okay. Each of these, you'll see up here in this one, there's a little circle. If you click on that, it expands it bigger, and then you can see all of them.
So those are all each, like the ones that don't have a name really do have a name, it's just not showing up on. Okay.
Yes, and then using the filter over here in the hidden bar, you can get more information about, if you're interested in one neighborhood association in particular, you can filter that out as well.
Okay.
They work just the same as these up here at the top.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Pretty cool.
Okay, with that, I'm going to pass it on to Monica.
Great, good afternoon. Now I'm going to talk through the communication and marketing efforts that we've had so far with the MyWaco app. Obviously, a critical factor of this app is ensuring our residents are informed and know what it is and how to access it. The marketing plan for the MyWaco app started months before the app was launched. One method of communication was via newsletters. The printed newsletter, which is inserted into our water bills, included coming soon promos before the launch, and then the MyWaco app was the main feature on the front page of the newsletter during our main launch. Our e-newsletters, which goes out every other week, includes the MyWaco app promotions in every issue, and our team plans to continue this messaging as we work to continue to grow this audience. Baylor students make up a large population in our community, and engaging them with the app was an important factor for us. Staff met with the president of the student government prior to the launch and coordinated promotional efforts, including signage on campus, with a QR code to download the app.
Monica, was that done at any of the other higher institutions of learning in town?
It was just done with Baylor.
Okay.
Yeah, good point. We all know that video is an impactful tool for communication. Our talented communication staff developed and produced in-house 5 different promotional videos in both English and in Spanish that starred our very own employees, with huge thank you to those for their participation. These high-quality ads ran on all platforms and were shared multiple times by our residents, other city department staff, and even some of our council members. Sharing these videos increases our reach to those who do not follow our social media accounts. The total organic reach is well over 100,000, which is wonderful. On our current website, we've created a web page that explains more about the app. This includes how-to videos in both English and Spanish with instructions for downloading and using the app. Additionally, for those who do not want to download the app, there is a direct link to make a request. We provide many different avenues for our residents to access the app information and provide us feedback. On our social media accounts, we include links to the app. We place the QR code on our promotions. And on the main page of our website, there's a link to the My Waco app on the scrolling information header, and it's currently the Contact Us section of the homepage. It takes you directly to the app as well. We have received some great feedback since the launch of the app. We realize it takes intentional time to go in and submit a request, and we are grateful to receive all communication, whether it's complimentary or it guides us for continuous improvement. This comment came from a resident new to the app. I am new to the Waco app and am very impressed by the responses so far. I can only believe that all everyone has to do is a lot here. So thank you to the people who work for the city. Waco is a great place to be. Thank you. Waco Wonderland was so much fun. My kiddos didn't want to leave. Well done to the Parks and Rec team and all the other city staff who helped make it a success. Thank you to the refuse driver who picks up trash for my mother-in-law. She is in her 90s and very independent. She gets her carts out by herself, but really appreciates the driver who is thoughtful enough to often return them to her driveway or yard. Please pass on our thanks. Ensuring the continued success of this app and making it a useful and helpful interaction tool for our residents still remains a priority. As we work to increase engagement and maintain momentum, we will look to execute these next steps. The My Waco app will have a prominent location on our new city website that is currently in development. Additionally, we'll be adding a new resident page to the website that will include useful information for our new residents to navigate and feel informed. We will build out a consistent plan for social media communication, create a separate insert that will go into the water bill specifically for the My Waco app. We'll continue to focus on our newsletter promotions for both printed and digital. We'll create additional PSAs, including some of the high-level ones that we received, such as bulk trash or building hazards, and also explain how to use the app and highlight some of our success stories. And we have a proposal to City Council. Members who would love to participate, we would look to encourage you to come in and record your own PSA for you to share.
iPhone SE just for that occasion.
We thank you for your time and your support. This app provides an opportunity to engage our community in a new way, and we're excited about its success and look forward to its continuous impact in our community. Now we open up for any additional questions.
Before the council hops in, can I say something?
Yeah.
And then you can have it.
Yeah, it's all yours, Brad.
I want to remark on two things that become evident as we sit here. First, each of these three individuals that you're seeing in front of you have joined our organization in the last 2 years, and they are just of the highest quality order. They are doing really neat work on behalf of our residents. So I just want to say, each of you, just phenomenal. Wouldn't be here at this point without each of you, so thank you. And then secondly, because Dale always taught me never miss a chance to give the council credit for something. And so I'm going to give y'all credit for the app, because ultimately you decide on things like this to fund them, but you also, a couple years ago, funded 2 new positions in IT for decision support specialists, and Stephanie is one of those. And
Thank
so
you.
the seed, yeah, Stephanie's thankful. And we're thankful she joined us from the city of Austin and made the move up here. But I just want to give the council credit for allowing us to expand our staff, because these are services that we couldn't necessarily offer under prior levels of staffing in IT. And so thank y'all for doing that. And this is fruit of that work that you did 2 years ago. So thank y'all.
That's great. I agree with everything Bradley just said there. I know that Alice and Dylan know when we were first, and Andrea too, when we first got on council here as a team, ordinance enforcement and code enforcement and just the process of that We all wanted it to just see how does it work, how long does it take, and how can we improve, response times, process data. And man, this thing checks so many boxes on how are we doing. And we kind of got sidetracked because I know you were just giving a sample of a report, and we were all hungry to see that kind of information because we all got something out of it. And I think we'll all continue to get good information, good dashboard information out of this system. A good centralized system. I like the sample dashboards and the reports, great flow of data. I think, just to kind of echo some of the things that Mayor Meek was saying before, just improved communication. I think efficiencies we're going to get out of this, and it's going to lead to process improvements. And that's part of the question I have. Process improvements, better service, and then really a better return on investment for the taxpayers. But one question I have, or a couple questions here, is there, and again, the open and close, right, we kind of got sidetracked on that a little bit, but I think that's important to all of us because a lot of times we'll get a call and we'll kind of forward the concern of the citizen, and then some people that's not a closed deal, right? I mean, all we did was kind of move it down the path. And I still think hopefully this system will help us identify steps in that pathway too, so we can respond to the citizen by saying, well, it's got to go to the department head, and the department head puts it on the thing, and then this happens, and the guy comes and does it, and that's going to take 4 days or whatever. If we can get this system to that kind of predictive pathway and reporting that back, I mean, I think we've got a gold mine here. The other observation I had is that, I mean, I like it for people who are, very, I see the pothole, okay, here's the pothole, report, send to my Waco. Is there any way to, there's other things too. People call in, people fill out a report, people send an email, people send a text. Can we think about how we get this and this information is only on the my Waco deal. Can we all be thinking about how do we get the omnibus aggregate report of all the different ways? I guess one method is to push everybody to my Waco, which I think is good. But I think you're still going to have 20% of the population is going to use alternative methods of filing their ordinance or their code enforcement or the totality of these issues. So as we think about reporting, I just want to make sure that we're accommodating all different methods, and hopefully 100% of the issues are coming through my Waco in whatever time period. But we're missing. I mean, let's be honest. We're missing part of the overall data if we're just looking to my Waco right now.
And on the first part there, that council member from Rock Solid that lives in California, there's a new module coming out called Constituent Engagement. It speaks to exactly what you're talking about, where you make sure that your requests are getting routed the correct way and that you get feedback on that as well. So there'll be more on that, and it's something we're looking at. But absolutely, trying to standardize how we interface customer interactions and resident interactions into one system. Some departments use Rock Solid for everything. So as they get phone calls, they get emails, they're putting that in the system. That comes back to that process improvement, standard operating procedures, to encourage departments to do that across the board. I know also too, we've talked about call center, really beefing up call center at some time, to really make sure we're including all of those different channels of interaction so that they're coming into one spot, where we can measure that data and get a hold of it quickly. I think that's important moving down the road. And there's some new solutions that we're looking at down the road that will help us get to that point as well.
I'm just so excited about it because, I mean, we can see that, okay, whatever, on a pothole, it's taken from the time we get it to the point that it gets completed. We find out that there's 10 steps and it takes 2 weeks. Unacceptable. Let's hire one more person to shorten the process and get this done quicker. Or there's all kinds of possibilities that are anytime you can improve a process or really dissect the process, you're able to improve the process. So
absolutely,
Bradley and the team and all you guys, this is great. This is kind of what we were starting to envision a few years ago, and it's coming to fruition. It's great.
I love this. I love the idea of really beefing up our omni-channel customer experience, so that way we have all that information in one place, and like Councilwoman Bearfield always says, there's no wrong door, and so we're getting people connected. I was just watching Mr. Mayor last night, which is very entertaining if you don't watch it, but they were talking about like activating Gen Zs to vote, and thinking about how do we get this information into the hands of people that will use it. I'm curious if we could consider, in all of your free time, doing some outreach to our local high schools, so that way our Gen Zs that always have a device in their hand can also be on the look, and be eyes and ears on the street. And then love the idea of the signage and the work that we did with Baylor, kind of trying to pull through some of that with TSTC or MCC, so that way we also get more eyes on this. But this is such an incredible tool for our residents to be empowered, for us to not feel overloaded, and for us to take an even higher level of responsibility. So thank you to each of you and to your teams for leading this out.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will join the chorus of praise. I had a chance to use it early on when a friend in the bank district complained of a pothole, and then began singing my praises after I submitted it and work was being done before the lunch hour. And so that was a cool turnaround there on how responsive it is. But yeah, grateful for all your good work on this. Trying to avoid making a joke about fax machines being routed through rock solid here and passing it along down the road.
I think that makes sense.
Thank you guys, to our staff, for being thoughtful and proactive in how we can engage with our residents more. This is going to be this has been and will continue to be an incredible tool to empower our residents to be active in shaping the direction of our city. Something I try to always say when meeting with residents is that the work of the city is a team sport, and everybody's got a role to play on the team. And tools like this make that more of a reality. So I'm excited to continue to review the metrics and move forward on this in the days ahead, and continue to have options for our residents to be engaged through this. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right, Mayor, we've got about 15 minutes, and we've got one more work session that I think is probably just as exciting, really. But I just wanted to make sure I've kind of put the council in awareness on our timeline here. But we're going to have Joel Martinez, our Director of Aviation, join us for our last work session today, which is an update on the terminal building modernization project. And as the council's aware, we do have some submitted construction proposals that are higher than our original estimates in terms of cost. And so Joel's going to walk us through that and talk through our recommended value engineering approach for this very important project. Joel?
All right. Thank you, Bradley. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Today we'll talk about our terminal. Too close. Today we're going to talk about our terminal building modernization project, and we'll kind of give you a brief, outline, of what we're going to do here. Talk about the proposals that we were given, our budget, and our value engineering approach that we have taken. The contract award recommendation, which is before the council tonight. We'll talk about where the funding will come from, and then the proposed schedule if that contract is awarded tonight. Just a real brief timeline. I know we've had several action items regarding the terminal building, but I'm going to give you just kind of from where we are to where we were to where we are today. In November of 2020, KCAL Architecture was awarded a contract to design the terminal building modernization project. A year later, after a lot of a discussion with stakeholders and City Council, Creative Waco was contracted to procure the public art, which is a very exciting component of this project. And then as projects became close to completion, it was, obvious that we would gain a better value if we combined 3 projects into one. And on December 7th of 2021, City Council approved the use of competitive sealed proposal process versus competitive sealed bid. So how our proposals were developed and our budget as well. The engineer's estimates were submitted on August 12th of 2021. The request for proposals were issued almost 8 months later. Proposals were opened on March the 11th. 3 bids were received. And as Bradley alluded, those bids are in that table before you all, and they are much higher than we anticipated. As a side, or 2 side notes, the proposals will expire on June the 11th, and staff has identified internal processes to ensure that projects come in on time or on budget and are accurately identified for the future there at the airport. So our value engineering process, obviously with the bids being much higher than we anticipated, there was a team comprised of staff from facilities, purchasing, city manager's office, and the airport that worked with the lowest proposed offer on value engineering options. They offered about 25 different options. The goals that we had were to maintain the integrity and the intent of the overall project while considering the budgeted project cost. And the team identified 11 areas that could be value engineered, reduced, and or eliminated. So I'm going to highlight a couple of the kind of the big pieces for us. One of the recommendations to touch were the dining space. The original design, the cost was over was $650,000, and again, that was a fully renovated and furnished dining space. The value engineering proposal, or our recommendation, reduces that overall cost by $287,000. Again, you have all the finishes. We have the ceilings and the flooring and the paint and the lighting is all completed, but this also allows for a, maybe in the future, for either the city or for a vendor to come in and kind of finish it out with their own furnishings. And I just wanted to provide a picture of what it looks like today. So if we eliminated this space, we would save $650,000, but again, we would have the rest of the building fully modernized and fully touched, and then the dining space would look just like it does today, and like it has since probably 1999. Another concept here that we took a hard look at was the LED canopy in the baggage claim area. The initial design and cost for that was $100,000. And without that, we added some lighting, additional lighting in there, but you can see where that LED lighting canopy is eliminated. This does offer, maybe in the future, an opportunity for public art to be installed there. Through this art process, we've seen some really neat and great local art for us, and so that may be something we can consider in the future. So value engineering items that we looked at there were over 50,000. We've already discussed the dining room and the LED canopies. Some additional items that didn't have that pop as far as an impact, but they do impact the bottom line, are the toilet compartment materials substitutions, as well as the alternate vendor for the wall systems. And the last item there is replacing the Acoustic-Built ceiling product. Now, those aren't the only items that we have. We have a full list of the items that we're proposing here for a total savings of $864,902. So the main terminal area will retain the look as has been presented countless times, either to the city council or the airport or the aviation advisory board. So the recommended value engineering options will have no impact to the integrity of the intent of this project. So staff recommends awarding a contract this afternoon or this evening to Hensel Phelps Construction for $8,791,098. The contract amount reflects the base proposal amount minus those value engineering items that we negotiated and as we described previously. The project budget, and again, this project came to light when we were funded or awarded CARES Act funding in June of 2020, and so we had significant funding there for that. This does require us to reprogram $1.5 million that was initially kind of a reimbursement to the general fund over that program years of 4 years. So without the CARES Act funding, the general fund would have paid for those operating costs overall. And then also that reprogramming for fiscal year 22-23, and then the first half of fiscal year 23-24. And this would also require a reprogramming of a little over $1.4 million that would eliminate plans for a hangar complex development. And again, that's a project that would generate future revenues, but again, it doesn't require general fund impact there.
So, Joel, just
Yes, sir.
quickly, so the variance, obviously, this was budgeted back before skyrocketing labor and material and supply chain issues. And so the bulk of the difference between the lowest bid and what we had budgeted is going to be made up for by additional CARES Act funding that's coming from 2 other areas. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. One of which was just reimbursing the general fund, and the other was the hangar complex development.
That's right.
Okay, thanks.
And so if this contract is awarded this evening, we can anticipate construction to start in July of this year with a I guess a 14 to 16 month obviously schedule, but bear in mind that we are hopeful that the supply chain won't be as impactful as we've seen in other projects. So by summer of 2023 or by Christmas or holiday travel of 2023, we'll have a newly renovated terminal building. Any questions?
Question?
I don't have any questions. I just have a statement. I've been flying out of Waco Airport some 20-odd years, 24. Anyway, when I first started flying out of Waco Airport, it was, but since you came on, you have really upgraded that airport terminal. And I just wanted to say thank you to you, especially when you came forward and put up local art. And all the staff is so friendly at your airport terminal, and I want to thank you for that as well. But I didn't used to enjoy flying out of Waco, but I have since you came on. So I just want to make sure staff and council members know that I really appreciate what Joel has done and worked with our airport terminal. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
I'll echo all of you there on that sentiment, Joel. Great presentation, and appreciate your leadership out there at the Waco Airport. And I know we ran into construction cost challenges here with supply chain issues, inflation issues, materials and labor costs. And I appreciate the discipline of the cost cutting here, because without the cost cutting, we might not have been able to get started on this thing. But we have to cut the costs on these deals. Just get it back to a place where we can launch the project. So it's tough, and those are some cool things we had to cut out. But I think you still retain 90% of what this is going to look like, and the pictures are still pretty, and we're moving towards that, to that end. And I know those of us that travel a lot see these regional airports, and some of them are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Waco's not one that's in that group right now, but I see that we're going to be very cool.
Get in there. Get in there.
But yeah, we've given you some tools here to make this a neat place, and even the features that we're taking out. It seems like, as you said, they're at a later time. If we get funding lined up, we can add those back in if and as it's appropriate. So, great job, and I appreciate your leadership out there. Well,
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Councilmember Holmes, because I do think that those are things that were the value engineering took away, are things that aren't detrimental to any type of fundamental scope of the project. I mean, it's decorative for the most part. I think, I was shaking my head, you were talking about the restaurant could be the same, and I'm like, no. Total Bugs Bunny meme, no, because that's not even an option for me. But, I think that it would, it may be beneficial for the restaurateur to provide their own so they can complete their look for their brand in our airport. So I don't see that as a loss. The lighting piece, so artistically, we can figure that out. And, we have such philanthropic community, somebody might want to pay for that. So, I mean, I don't consider it a loss at all. So I think that those are the things, that getting back to the business at hand in renovating our regional airport is what was done and what needs to be supported, and we are looking forward to no longer comparing other regional airports and just zipping through ours with our chest stuck out proudly, because it is a contender. So keep doing what you're doing, and we're going, we'll figure out the rest later.
All right, thank you.
It beats having a coffee pot on a ledge up there. When I first started riding it, that coffee pot was out there and you were lucky to get coffee. But that's the way it was.
Yeah. No joke.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. I appreciate it.
Hey, council, one thing I'll add before Joel gets too far. Our staff, when we have them do things like this, it's a big day for them to come to council and present to y'all, and we get a little nervous sometimes. Joel was not nervous today, but what I'll highlight is that he was in front of a couple groups today. He was in front of the council, and he also presented to Leadership Waco this morning. And so he had quite a big day. So kudos, Joel, on both those presentations.
Thank you, Joel. Are there any requests for future agenda items? If not, we will recess the work session and reconvene for regular session for executive session as read into the record by the city secretary at 5:11 p.m.
Mayor and council, we're going to go into executive session. Notice is hereby given the city council will go into executive session in accordance with the following provisions. Real property, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072, and Economic Development, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 55.087. We are now in executive session.